we are officially in the second year, at least this week, of the MLB debut patches being in Topps Chrome baseball or Topps Chrome update baseball. I think that's what I don't think they're in the first Topps update, but 2 years in, I think last year we've seen basically all the big rookies that were in last year's products pulled, at least from my knowledge, which I was a little bit skeptical on, if I'm going to be completely honest, because as I was watching a lot of the breaks and kind of following along with those cards that were being pulled, it kind of seemed like a lot of the big prospects, like the Anthony Volpe, like got pulled pretty late in the season. Again, I don't know if that's necessarily a product of just random, because I think ultimately there is a lot more random stuff that happens within the sports card industry than maybe we expect there to be, because I think we know so much about cards. We know so much more in the past few years than we've known in like really the history of cards, that I feel like everything that is strange needs some sort of explanation, when I don't, in some scenarios, there just isn't an explanation, and I'm not saying Topps is doing anything mischievous here with where they're sending the card or holding the card back so that way people continue to buy the product. I don't think that's the case here necessarily, but I think they probably do have some say in how many of those cards are being released as the product goes out. Like, they know in each of the cases how many of those cards exist. Like, just say that they don't know that. I think that's a little bit naive, but also I think it maybe is potentially random how they sort of chose where those cards were going out and when they were going out, I suppose. I think they knew there was, like, here's what I would say. I think they knew there were patch cards going out in certain cases. I don't think they necessarily knew which, like, I think it's two different departments that are deciding a card goes into a pack, which card goes in, and then where the case is going. I think those are different departments. So I don't necessarily think that they know which cards are which. I think that if a case is going out with one of those cards, they probably know. They know where it's going, or they know that it's going out. And again, maybe these are different departments, so they don't know where it's going. They know that it's going out. They just don't know where and to who and what card. But I think the other piece of the Topps debut patches here, for me at least, is I think that Topps needs to figure out what was successful about those cards and replicate whatever they can there, right? If that makes sense. Like, I think that they need to, because I think that there have been some things that have been good for Topps, or Topps and Fanatics. I just say Topps because I'm used to it. But I think that there have been some things that have been good with Topps and Fanatics. And then there have probably been other things that have not been as good. Like, I think I think two things just off the top of my head, these debut patches. And ultimately, I think the 1/1 cards were good. And I think they were good for different reasons. I think the 1/1 on the Topps Now cards, what they created there, was obviously good for the company. And ultimately, if that revenue is going back into the company, into figuring out how to make other sports card products good, then that is ultimately good for the industry. But if the whatever, $6 or $7 million that they got from collectively all the cards that they've sent that are the 1/1 autos, if that's just going into, I don't know, Michael Rubin's pocket, that's probably not so good. I would say that's probably a bad use of funds, if I'm going to be completely honest, because I hope that I don't, because here's the thing, the 1/1 Topps Now cards are not new necessarily. Like, there have been 1/1 Topps cards for quite some time. It probably is the fact that they came out with that triple auto first, and that's why the concept became so popular. So when they started launching it to other brands, there was a Steph Curry Messi auto that was a 1/1. And then also, the Shohei Ohtani, again, maybe it was they were catching lightning in a bottle there when it came to the players and the decision of what players were going to be getting these cards. But if they are reinvesting the money into their products, into their industry, that obviously I think is good. I think these debut patches have also been a phenomenal addition to make Topps Chrome really kind of put it over the top in terms of like making it one of those top products. Because in my opinion, I think it's flagship, Topps Chrome, Bowman Chrome first. And after that, it's kind of, I don't know exactly, maybe it's a Bowman Chrome Auto, but I think adding these, and I'm talking about if I'm ranking Topps products that come out each year, and I'm talking about base products, because obviously like Dynasty and any of those other expensive RPA products are going to be much more valuable. And valuable, I'm putting in maybe in quotations, because value is kind of different for everybody. But those products are obviously they're going to have more value to them in theory. But to really solidify Topps Chrome, because that's one thing that I had seen over the past few years, is Topps Chrome, maybe it was always popular, and maybe it was my own bias that was either telling myself it wasn't popular or kind of not ranking it as high as maybe I should have. But it always felt like Topps Chrome was like right on the cusp of being one of the more important products for people to buy for a rookie. And maybe Topps saw that as well, and that's why they decided to put these patches into the Topps Chrome product, which that's the other reason why I think the debut patches are so impactful and so important within the sports card industry right now, is because they have, I guess in theory, they've made them accessible for for like a collector who's just going to buy a box at a store. They put them in Topps Chrome. Like they didn't put them in Dynasty. If they put them in Dynasty, I don't even know necessarily if they would be as impactful of a card as they are, because they are in Topps Chrome, which I think, as I'm saying this out loud, it could be similar to manufactured rarity. I think is something that we've seen a lot in sports cards recently over the past few years, is like they have figured out a way to come out with cards that are rare, but like they're promoting the products with saying the cards that are rare. So it's like, it's kind of a poll here. I don't know. I don't know the exact analogy I'm trying to use there. It's kind of like going back and forth between like, yeah, sure, it's rare, but like, is it, you're promoting it's rare. So like, how rare is it really? Kind of like how Kaboom and all of the like downtowns have become a lot less rare than they were in the past. They're very much more common. So maybe these patch cards are rare from it's maybe a manufactured rarity. Like obviously a one of one patch is going to be rare, but it's like if you are increasing, which we've seen over the past few years, if you're increasing the products to a significant like super high up, in theory, what ends up happening is those cards become more rare because there's more product, but like also there's only one of them. So that doesn't really determine whether something is rare or not, if whether there's one or however many there are within that for that specific player for in that product. But if they're coming out with more product, it gives people the false hope that they can pull that card. Maybe that's the point that I'm trying to make here, is that it's not rare. It is rare, but it's rare because maybe there's so much of the product. I guess that might not be exactly what I'm trying to say, but I think that there's something there with the increase in product and then the increase in like this one of one patch card, which I guess I have advocated for buying product and holding it. I think that this Topps Chrome product could be one, because there are so many rookies within this product. And I know that this kind of goes almost counteracting to what I've said in the past about really prospecting on current rookies. Again, if you're prospecting, you're taking the chance. So I assume that that you're taking a chance here. Like if you're prospecting, that. So for me to sit here and say, yeah, maybe it's a good buy to hold for a little bit. Obviously, maybe it's obvious, maybe it's not. I'm under the assumption that if anybody who's actually taking that type of advice knows what type of risk you're taking by buying that product. I just look at the list of how many of these debut patches are. There's so many players, and it's like every good rookie from this year, because that's sort of the thing with this product, is that you're going to see it's a national treasures type thing where it's like you're only getting one set of the cards. You're not getting a whole different thing, which that kind of goes against what Topps has done, really. But again, I have always been in this scenario. I've always been in the thought process that there should be less flagship products. They should really kind of limit it to, I don't know, like Series 1 and Series 2, or like Series 1 and Topps Update, or just even calling it not even Series 1, just being like, this is flagship and then this is flagship update. I think that makes a lot of sense. That's what they do with Topps Chrome. But the Topps Chrome product that has the patches in it is only going to be Topps Chrome Update, not the original Topps Chrome that comes out throughout the year. That way they can get all the rookies into the product that they want. I did have a little bit of an internal debate on if I wanted to do a full episode on this topic, and I guess we'll see how far I get. There potentially may be a second topic that I talk about on this podcast today. No, actually, yeah, there is going to be a second episode. There is going to be two topics here on the show. I think now that I wrote down a couple of the topics, and now that I'm looking at the second topic that I have on the list, I definitely think I can fit these two in. So the first topic is going to be that Bronny is going to the G League, which is not necessarily super surprising, but from a sports card perspective, I'd say he's probably the most important prospect this past year. Like, and I don't know if that was like LeBron propaganda from the draft, because that was one thing that I kind of looked at. I was like, everybody's saying this is like the worst draft of all time. And it's like, and it just felt very odd because it felt like there's always a prospect. Like, I think next year we've got Cooper Flagg, who plays for Duke, who is he's a New England guy. He's from Maine. So he's gonna be very interesting to watch. But it feels like last year there weren't really, like Zach Edey, for example, is one of the other prospects I'm very excited to see how he does in the NBA. But it just seemed weird that like everybody was talking about how this was the worst draft class of all time. So like Bronny, even though he's going to be playing in the G League, is probably going to be included in every sports card product this year. And I think the fact that he played in the league probably makes it so that way he will be in those products, because in years past, like, for example, Taco Fall and Kendrick Nunn, which are probably two names that people don't know who those players are, if I'm going to be completely honest. Because I think Taco Fall might play in China now, and I don't know what Kendrick Nunn is doing. But they weren't included in the regular base Prism set. They were included in the Chronicles Prism set. For the first time, I think, ever, they put Prism base cards in the regular Chronicles lineup, which I thought was a very good idea. I mean, I think it's a good way for them to include those rookies that maybe didn't play at the beginning of the season potentially. So this is, I guess, the opposite, where Bronny did play at the beginning of the season. If he's going to be playing at the end of the season, I guess maybe we don't really know 100%. But he is probably the most important prospect, or maybe not. I don't know. I mean, it's really, it's going to be interesting coming off of a year where we had one of, a new phenomenon superstar rookie, like with Wembanyama last year, and then this year we're going in and the rookie class just isn't as strong. And then you got Bronny, who, again, I there still will be those Bronny and LeBron cards, but the other piece of this is that, like, what do you do if you are Topps, if you have the exclusive? Because that's kind of maybe the other thing, is that we're not going to get any like RPAs for Bronny because he's a Topps exclusive. So like, that's kind of another little wrinkle in this conversation, is that we're really going to be only going to be getting Topps autographs. And if they have an exclusive with Bronny, they're going to be coming out with his products, whether he's playing in the NBA or not. And I think the fact that he is playing in the NBA, or he did play in the NBA, the companies are going to justify putting him in products for any number of reasons, whether he really deserves to be in products or not, or whether he deserves to be on the regular checklist. Like, I don't think that they include every single rookie. I mean, I guess if you make your debut, they are putting you in the product now that I'm thinking about it. But like, if he only plays like 3 or 4 games in the pros and basically barely plays and then goes down to the G League, like, he's going to be carrying products and people are going to be excited to get Bronny cards. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. We'll see how it goes with breaks and stuff like that. And we'll see if I don't know, because it could be just people could be getting excited for his cards, but like not in like a genuine way, like in a way where it's like, we got to sell this product and Bronny is the card that we got to pull out of here. So, he made his G League debut, 6 points, 5 turnovers. I don't know. I'm not going to get into his stat line here, but realistically, he probably could have played another year in college. Like, he obviously had that heart injury. And I think the other thing, the last piece of this that I'll talk about before I jump to the other subject is like, I kind of talked about this a little bit on Hobby Hotline over the weekend. And I kind of thought of a conspiracy that LeBron and Bronny, the only reason Bronny made the opening day roster was for sports cards. Like, I wonder if LeBron had somebody, a Michael Rubin, or it would have to be Michael Rubin. If he had Michael Rubin in his ear being like, hey, you got to make sure Bronny is playing so we can sell these cards, like, then just send him down. Cause it's like beginning of the season. Who really cares? It's not like this is the middle or the end of the season where it's like, maybe they need wins. They can just get him in for a couple games. Then he's eligible for, rookie cards, which we've seen within soccer that Topps isn't afraid to just like put rookie card logos on whatever cards they want. So like, I don't know. I mean, they're definitely going to try and get as many Bronny rookie autographs as they can. But like, maybe this is a circumstance where and this is going to counteract everything I think I just said, but it's like, maybe they say you have to play 10 games, you have to play 20 games. So it's like next year or the year after, when they have the full NBA license, maybe that's when they could be like, oh, we're going to do these full rookie cards now. I don't know, just kind of something to rack your brain with. The other topic we have on the show here is an interesting tweet that I've kind of talked about when it comes to grading. There is a very double-edged sword when it comes to grading, because we want to grade our cards and we want them to come back with good grades. And then we also want them to be valuable. But like, if too many cards are getting graded and they're all coming back with good grades, that's sort of diminishing the price of the population of the cards. I think, at least. So there was an interesting tweet, and I will nothing really against this person that tweeted this out. They were basically saying that they pulled a Julio Rodriguez auto, and they got the redemption. It was a redemption. They got it sent to them from Topps, and then they sent it directly to grading, and it came back an 8.5, and they were not very happy about it, to say the least, like in their tweet. And like I said, I if this is the expectation, I think now in this modern sports card era, which I think is fine, because I would say we've increased the percentage of how many cards are getting high grades. And if you are getting a card directly from Topps and you're not taking out of the holder at all, you would kind of assume that that's probably going to be a card that maybe gets a 9 or a 10. Like an 8.5, still I think fine. It's still a Julio Rodriguez auto, so it's still like a good card. But an 8.5, like, you might as well have just sold the card if you wanted to sell it. If you want to sell it, you might as well have just sold it raw, because then you don't have to deal with all of this headache, realistically. And I think because the other thing is, like, this card didn't come out of a pack. It came directly from Topps. So I can see where there's a little bit of frustration. I can see why there's a little bit of frustration where you are not, this was not open from a breaker. You didn't open this card. It got sent directly from you, and then it gets an 8.5. I think that this really comes down to, like, just that grading is very subjective, unfortunately. And I think within the industry nowadays, we definitely expect all modern cards to come back 10. Like, if I'm grading modern cards, I'm expecting at least 50% to come back at 10, and especially 50% to come back at 10. And those are cards that I've bought from eBay and other people have touched, not cards that are coming directly from Topps. If it's coming directly from Topps, sure, yeah, they had to sign, Julio Rodriguez probably signed this. Well, he did sign it. He signed the card, and then he signed so many other cards. That's like, maybe it was a player thing. Like, that's really, I think it's less on Topps's end in terms of the person being mad at the company, and maybe more on the player. Because that's really the only thing I can think of here of why this card is not like coming back with a higher grade. And I think a lot of modern cards are going to come back with that high grade. And we as a sports card industry are expecting new cards to have a very high percentage, whether it's a 9 or a 10, like, because this was 8.5. So it's a half a point below the 9, but we are getting cards. And if it's not coming out directly from a pack, the fact that it did get a little bit of a lower grade. Now, 8.5 isn't horrible, but like I said, at that point, if you're going to be selling this card, it might have even better to just not get it graded, because the raw version in the Topps seal, you're probably going to be getting the same amount. And it's not like a 1-of-1 autograph either. Like, it was an orange, which I think those are numbered 25, I believe. I'm looking at the card. It doesn't say on the front of the card. It's probably on the back, but it's an orange. So that means there's more of them. But I don't know. It's a slippery slope and a double-edged sword, all of those kinds of analogies here when it comes to grading, because we want all of them to have good grades. But at the same time, if we want the cards that we're grading to hold value, we don't want the population to go up, because as the population goes up, in theory, the price should go down. And I think also, too, within sports cards, it doesn't always work that way, if I'm going to be completely honest. Like, sometimes very regular economic formulas or things within sports cards are like the opposite, which is very interesting. So I don't know. I mean, I think it begs the question, like, do they need to almost grade these cards beforehand? I don't know. Probably not. Grading a redemption, that probably doesn't make much sense. But like, or getting some, I don't know, because you can't really guarantee the quality of a card. But I mean, I think the other point here is that, like, hypothetically, if this person sent this card back, if they sent it, like, unfortunately, if they send it 2 or 3 times, which they are allowed to do, there is definitely a good shot that eventually it would come back as a PSA 10, most likely. If you're on social media, you probably have seen, I mean, this is like a yearly occurrence. Like, this is very common for this type of narrative to be discussed on social media this time of year, because you get to the end of the year, you kind of are doing a little bit of a review. Sorry, I couldn't speak there for a second. You do a little bit of a review on how the year went. And I think last year I probably talked about this topic. Now, I didn't discuss, I just, you know what I did? I discussed people discussing the topic. I didn't talk about the topic because, in my opinion, the topic has just run its course, really. Like, and I've seen this from my perspective. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I've never made videos like this, but it's the time of year when people start making our sports cards dead videos or our articles. And, you know, it's fine. I think if people want to write those articles, or they want to talk about that on their podcast, or they want to talk about that on their show, that's fine, I guess. I mean, it gets clicks. And I think ultimately that is, you know, that's what we're all here for, I guess, in theory, like, to get people to listen to our stuff. And it's a topic that does really well. It's just not a topic that I feel like the headlines that you're going to see, especially this year, because if you look at Card Ladder, for example, I went to Card Ladder and I looked at the year-to-date change. So I don't know, maybe January or something is going to, maybe the December is going to change something within these. You have like a lot of red on there, but it's honestly a lot of red that's only like a majority of them, like you really do see like hockey, low end tennis, soccer, unfortunately, are in the like plus 10 negatives. But the rest of them are all in that like, I think, I'm just looking at it's like between negative whatever, zero point 0.1 to 10. That's where, I'm looking at, that's where a majority of these are falling in. You do have like football, which is up 4%. High population, that one's up 1%. Basketball up 3%. Modern, which I didn't realize that they categorize modern, and I don't categorize it as this, but when I'm talking about modern, I probably need to be talking about more ultra modern rather than modern, because on Card Ladder, modern is they categorize that from 84 to 2008. That's also up. The ultra modern is down 3%. That's from 2009 to now, basically. So when you really look at the numbers, I would imagine that a lot of people's videos are going to be that thing right there. Like, because I think the other piece of it is that sports cards are never like going to not be a thing. Like they've always, popularity has risen and decreased over the past few years, probably more significantly than other years. And I think that also we're basing percentages, in my opinion, off of like one of the craziest increases we've ever seen in sports cards. So I think it's fairly reasonable to expect that we're going to see a little bit of a decrease when it comes to popularity, when it comes to cards being bought and sold. Like, I don't know. Again, it's more just that you're going to see it. And if you are upset, like, for a while, it was something that made me really upset, because in my head, I was like, but this isn't like this isn't correct. So like, I've realized that most of the time, if you do have, I don't know, if you take 2 seconds to look into the actual data, you'll see that like, sure, there's going to be increases and decreases. There's going to be there's going to be fluctuation in the popularity of cards. So I don't know. It is that time of year also where it might just be a good time to, if you're not running like a business on social media, it might be just a good idea to step away. I mean, I'm not going to get into the election at all, but that's been something where I've been really trying to stay off of social media, because it's just it always was garbage, but it's just become more and more garbage. And I think what you do see as we get closer to the holidays is, unfortunately, the holidays is a very happy time for some people, and for some, it's just not. So you're going to see people be more angry online during the holidays, I think, than happy, because all the people who enjoy the holidays and they are having fun are not on their phones. They're not on social media. So that's another thing to kind of think about, is like, don't get too wrapped up in all of the minutia of what's going on social media. Even though I do run a podcast where I talk about sort of what's going on social media, like I said, if you're not on it for a business or something, just take a step away. I think it's totally fine, especially within, cards and all of those types of things. The other interesting thing that I've seen people talk about is it's a little bit different than the thing that I was talking about yesterday with the card, with somebody who was talking about how they got a card graded and it didn't come back at 10. I saw the conversation has picked up on that a little bit, in my opinion. I've seen a couple other posts that have gone sort of, in the sports card world, viral is like, more than a few likes. That's really like, because I and maybe that's just my account. I don't know, whatever. But I've seen a couple different people talk about like, people are talking about tag grading, like TAG, which uses like computers and AI. And it was Sports Card News, which I don't know if that's run by Sports Card Radio or not, but it was like Sports Card News on Twitter. They were like, people don't care about where they get their cards graded. They just want a 10. And I was like, that's interesting. That's sort of what I was discussing on yesterday's podcast, I think. And then the other thing I saw was that the notion that if you don't like grading, you can completely avoid grading within sports cards. I thought that was very interesting. I forget exactly who said that, I'm actually just going to pull up Twitter really quickly just so I can make sure I credit that person, because I thought that was also a very interesting take that I think is very correct. It was those back pages, which I think that they do tweet about sports cards pretty frequently, but they put out an interesting post that, like, if you don't want to be in grading, you can completely avoid it within sports cards. I think that is my sentiment when it comes to a lot of things within the industry, just in general, is like, if there's something you like or there's something that you don't like, you can easily double down on the things that you like, and you can completely remove yourself from the things that you don't like within the industry. I do understand that a lot of people will say, well, if you want to be in the industry, you want to be involved in sports cards, there's some things that are impossible to avoid. And I mean, I would say, grading is grading is probably one of those things that's probably kind of hard to avoid. I would say any of those types of things, yeah, those are going to be, they're going to be harder to avoid than maybe, I don't know, if you don't like a sport, you can kind of avoid a sport. I think grading has become almost synonymous with the industry, really. And I think it's evolved to a point where, I don't know, it's not that I think that grading needs to be involved in cards, like the companies need to be more involved. But I think that they're and we have seen that with companies partnering with grading card companies, but I don't know. I think that there is a slippery slope potentially, and maybe that's the analogy. I know I've been messing up my analogies the past week or so, but maybe it's a slippery slope once these companies start getting involved with the grading, because then you really are expecting these companies to produce the cards. But at the same time, it's like, just look at how many of these cards there are, and how much of the production has increased versus grading increases, I guess, or how the industry has changed versus how maybe people still go about things in the industry the same way. I think that's maybe more of the point that I'm trying to make here, is that I think as we continue to change throughout the industry, grading probably will continue to grow as it has. But I think ultimately, if you're in the sports card industry, you are the one that gets to decide how you do the hobby. I think that's kind of a sentiment that I've been thinking about for the past few years. It's like, you can enjoy cards how you want to enjoy them, and you don't have to listen to what other people say about cards to enjoy them. You can do that. I mean, I found that there's times where I enjoy listening to people talk about cards that I'm interested in. But for the most part, I'd say a lot of the cards and maybe some of the more niche things that I am interested in sports cards are not as widely popular. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that makes you like a hipster or something like that. I don't think it really does. But I think ultimately, if you're in this industry and you're getting burnt out at a certain thing, just take a step back. And if you find that you really enjoy something random, double down on that random thing, because there are going to be other people that are interested in that thing, because the industry, at this point, the industry, although it has seen a little bit of a decrease in popularity, there's still so many people that are interested in so many different things within the card industry that you're bound to find someone who is interested in the niche thing that you're also interested in. This week's big news is Topps Chrome. Topps Chrome Update Baseball. It's out now. 250 names on the checklist for the debut patch, which I didn't realize it was that extensive, of how many players, which all of those players are not getting rookie cards also in the product, because Paul Skeens, I believe, Paul Skeens would, but players who made their debut at the beginning of the season were in their regular Topps Chrome rookie cards were in the first edition of Topps Chrome Baseball. So I don't know, maybe Friday's episode. I don't think I'm going to be talking about Topps Chrome, but like there's a potential that I might be, depending on what happens over the next, like, I don't know, few hours, 24 hours basically. But there are a couple pieces of things, because I know I talked about this on Monday's episode. There are a couple things that I want to touch on that have kind of developed since that episode. So one of the things was that Topps released Fanatics, on Fanatics Live, they released like a bounty system kind of for the first 50 debut patches. So of the 250, the first 50 patches that are, or the first 50 debut patches that are pulled on Fanatics Live up until also November 20th. So this isn't like for forever, which I don't know where those projections are coming in. Because if they're saying 50 patches could be pulled between, which I think that's probably overshooting it if I had to guess. I don't really know, but I'll talk about that in a second. But I want to talk about what the deal actually was. So if the patch gets pulled on Fanatics Live, the person who pulled the patch, so like the customer that was in the break that gets the patch, they are going to get $500 in Fanatics credit. Also, one viewer of the stream is going to get $500 in Fanatics credit. So overall, roughly about $50,000 Topps could be giving out in Fanatics credits over the next few weeks, or the next week or so, because the 20th is the last day for this promo. So stuff like this, I kind of wonder why Fanatics is doing it. Like, I get that they're trying to get more people to break this product and open the product. But I don't know. I mean, I wonder, the other piece of this is I really do wonder if like they're putting like 50, if they expect that 50 of these, so essentially 1/5 of the patches could be pulled potentially over the next week. I think that's probably a lofty number. I have seen one or two already pulled. I think one was on Fanatics Live, and then I did see Loop also pulled, someone on Loop pulled one of them also. So just in the first like day or so, we have seen two that have been pulled. I don't know if there are going to be the 50. I mean, I think that Fanatics will probably be doing some sort of tracking of these cards, if I had to guess, like which ones are getting pulled and which ones aren't. But the checklist is it's pretty wild that they're getting all 250, I think it's 253 rookies that have their patches in this year's products. They're all getting a debut patch card in this product. I do think it's pretty crazy that there's that many rookies that are going to be getting those cards. Like, I know throughout the year, there's probably that makes sense of how many there are. But all of them within one product is pretty wild. They're not all of them are going to get their rookie cards. So the other piece of news, I guess that's kind of all that I had for that specific topic. The next piece of news is it was Grand Salami Sports Cards. They put out a tweet talking about the odds for these cards, and they said it's 1 in 195 cases for hobby, 1 in 52 cases for jumbo, and then 1 in 45 cases for Breaker's Delight. And you know, those are some pretty crazy odds. It looks like from these odds, these cards aren't going to be in retail, like no blasters, at least based on this. And I'm not 100% sure if, I guess you can't find them. And if you're going to the store, you can't find them. But I do find that it's interesting that the difference between jumbo and Breaker's Delight is like, I'm going to try and do it's about 7 less cases for Breaker's Delight, which, you know, we've talked about this for a while within the industry that breaking, I think it has been embraced by the companies pretty significantly. I mean, I think like Whatnot, Loop, Fanatics Live, breaking, you know, I think it's been around for a while. I still think that people don't like it. Like, it's weird. Like, when I talk about breaking and stuff on like Hobby Hotline, I see the comments, like people they just crap all over breaking, which I get it's different. And I can understand why people might not be a fan of it. But at the same time, like, if you're in the sports card industry right now, it's just like, it is the way that it is. So I'm guessing the people aren't like, they're probably more just like collectors who don't really have a business necessarily within sports cards, because if you are a business, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately or unfortunately, breaking really does have to be kind of part of your buying and selling business, unfortunately. Or, well, again, I said unfortunately, but so it could be fortunately or unfortunately, because if you like it, it's fine. I think that there are good breakers. I think I talked about on the podcast a couple weeks ago, maybe last week or the week before. I talked about that. I think if you are breaking, there has to be some sort of license that you have to get, which, granted, if you're on a platform and you get kicked off the platform, that's kind of your license that's being revoked in a way. But I don't know. I mean, we've seen Fanatics, like they dove headfirst into the breaking. Like, they started a platform. They have kind of put their hands into everything that is sports cards, and without any really restrictions. Like, they've gotten into grading a little bit. They've got not like their own grading, but they've partnered with grading companies. They have their own marketplace. They have their own breaking service. And I think if you, like I was saying on Tuesday's episode or yesterday, talking about how grading is sort of becoming a part of sports cards. Like, I don't think Fanatics ever has their own major grading service. Like, I don't think that they would be able to do like a Fanatics 10 or something like that. But I think that they have done a decent job getting into all of these areas that they're looking to get into. Whether people like it or not, unfortunately, I think is kind of just the situation that we're in now. And the last piece of news I'm going to talk about here on the show is that the 1/1 Paul Skeens non-auto Superfractor has already been pulled. I would say that's probably one of the bigger cards other than the debut patches. I mean, the Superfractor, auto is going to be an important and very important card. And I guess a piece of this is Alt also put out a interesting post about the patch cards and asking if the patch cards, the debut patch cards, were going to be more important to a player's like array of cards than the 1/1 Bowman Superfractor, which I've always thought that actually the Bowman Superfractor rookie autos should be more popular. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I feel like all the 1/1 autos, whether it's Bowman Chrome or Topps Chrome, or Bowman Chrome, the first Bowman Chrome or the Bowman Chrome rookie auto Superfractor, I think all of those should be priced very similarly. And I think that the 1/1 non-autos, like this Paul Skeens card that got pulled, should be priced similarly to his non-auto Bowman Chrome card. For many years, I've seen a pretty significant difference and a big shift in fluctuation in like which card is the most important for a player. And sometimes it really just comes down to like what card is for sale. Like if a player's 1/1 Superfractor Bowman is for sale, if that's getting sold, then like that ends up helping the rest of his Bowman Chrome cards go up a little bit. If it's like the 1/1 Topps Chrome Superfractor auto, then that helps the Topps Chrome. If it's the regular Bowman Chrome auto, I don't think that necessarily does it. But between those two, and then I think the flagship is important, but I don't know. There's something about the Chrome cards that I feel like maybe are more important. But again, that's somewhere where the fluctuation has come in, if I'm going to be completely honest. Like that's where I've seen like between the first Bowman Chrome, or Topps Chrome, first Bowman Chrome, Topps Chrome, and then the Topps flagship, I've seen a lot of fluctuation in those cards. And I think Alt's question of, is the 1/1 debut patch, is that going to be more important than the Bowman Chrome Superfractor autograph? I think it's too early to tell. Unfortunately, I don't think I have necessarily an answer for that right now. I think having that patch in there is pretty significant. But at the same time, I also think like having that first Bowman, being it that it is a first Bowman Chrome card, I also think that's important. So like the autograph and the superfractor, or the autograph and the 1/1 nature of it, I think are kind of even. But I think the first card of a player versus the patch card, the patch rookie card of a player, that's where I think the argument kind of comes in of like, what's more important? Like, is it more important that the player's first card is the one that you want to buy, or that there is a patch that the player worn? Because the player does sign both of those cards. So it's not like you're looking at the difference between like, it's not like you're looking at the difference between, for example, like a Prism 1/1 versus like a Topps Chrome 1/1 for like the Wembanyama for basketball. You're looking at, the difference of like, does a patch matter, or does it being the first card matters? And I think that is going to be a conversation that will be very interesting to have over the next few years. And I also think it's very interesting that the patch has really been, I talked about this yesterday or the day before. I talked about like the patch really, it's impressive that they've been able to, it's impressive that the patch has been able to really kind of break the glass ceiling, I guess, in a way. And I don't think maybe that's not the correct terminology, but it's been able to get through into the sports card zeitgeist in a way that like they've been trying to do that. Topps has been trying to bring in more cards and promote more different cards. And I get, obviously it's a patch. So it's like, that's going to be a card that people probably want a little bit more than just like some random regular, case hit, I guess. But still, it's interesting to me that a card that is relatively new has been able to break into and become one of the more important cards in the hobby in such a short span. As we lead up to the World Cup, I think it's going to be important for companies to figure out a marketing strategy around some of their soccer products. And again, these are two things that I follow pretty closely when it comes to sports marketing, or just marketing, I guess, in general. But sports marketing, I think, is the good, more of the niche that I think. And then soccer. And a couple things have come out in the past like week or so. And I think that what I saw today actually basically prompted me to talk on the episode on the podcast today about like what the topic basically is going to be. And so the Euro Cup 2024 product came out for Topps Chrome Euro Cup 2024. And they unveiled the new logo that, from my knowledge, we have not seen on any soccer cards. We had not seen this national debut logo, not a rookie card logo, but a national debut logo. And it makes me wonder if Topps is going to continue to do this with soccer in the future, where the rookie card logo is not actually for rookie cards, I guess, just follow along here a little bit. So the rookie card logo will be different things for soccer. Obviously, we haven't really seen soccer cards be as popular as we have in the recent years. And I mean, unfortunately, soccer, if you look at, like I was talking about the card ladder index the other day, if you look at the card ladder index, soccer has been one of those sports that in the past year has dropped a lot in popularity. And I don't think that's necessarily the same reason as it is for other sports that have dropped in popularity. Like 2023 had the World Cup, so that's significant, obviously. 2023 World Cup. Yeah, 2023 had the World Cup. No, or was it 2022? 2022 had the World Cup. So there was a rise in popularity then. And then we had the Euros this past season, which I thought were very good. Like, they were this past summer, which, like I said, I thought were very good. And I think what Topps has done here is they've opened the avenue for different types of soccer cards to be important in in the hobby. Because the other thing that I saw some people complaining about was there's a Barcelona player who's like a young player who is not a rookie, because as this was the issue, was they were getting rookie card logos on their cards when they had been playing for a year or two with Barcelona. So it wasn't their rookie year when these cards were coming out. So I think it's an important distinction here that if they're going to do whatever it ends up being, I think you probably, the main two differences, I think, are going to be national team and club team, which is much different than American sports, any of the American sports. I think even with the MLS, I think it's, I think that the club team, I think, should be what it is. I don't think they should call it a rookie card, because I think, which again, I don't know. I'm sort of not spiraling here with sort of the thoughts that I have about this, but like, I think soccer is just going to be different, or I don't know. I mean, it seems like maybe Topps should just get rid of that type of logo altogether. And maybe that would bring a little bit more relevancy to some soccer cards of players that like, because ultimately what I feel like is happening here is Topps is just deciding what rookie card is the rookie card. Like, they're making the distinction what cards they're putting these logos on. And for an industry like we are, where there's a secondary market and there are, there's multiple markets within players and there's so many nuances to the secondary market, for Topps to just be able to come over the top and say, this is the rookie card, even if it's like, maybe not, even if it's maybe not, or like to put the national team debut logo on there, that's very similar, in my opinion, I think, with a rookie card logo. And soccer the structure is it's similar to baseball, but it's very different than any other American sport, because you can be a professional and play the only way you can be a professional basketball player, the only way you can be a professional, I guess it is like this. Okay. So it is kind of like this other place in the world. Basketball maybe is a bad example. Football, for example, you really are only considered a pro football player if you play in like the NFL or the XFL, USFL combo, the UFL, I believe. Baseball, it's a little bit more confusing because you're technically a pro when you make your minor league debut, but you're not playing in the big leagues. But you are playing through a system that gets you there, where soccer is like, you can go from MLS to Germany to England, and like, you are considered a pro in all of these places that you're playing, where sure, the Premier League is going to be, or any of those top 5 leagues, Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, all of the top leagues in the world. Like, I know there's 5 of them. All of those ones, you want to get there eventually. Bundesliga, like I said, you want to get there eventually. But it's like, if you don't get there, you can still be considered a professional. And it's like, even if you are, like American players, they're not, a lot of them now are playing for teams in those top leagues. But there are players for other nations and other countries that don't play in any of those 5 leagues. I mean, many of them do, but I'm just kind of using it as an example here. So for Topps, I think that there's an important distinction that they need to make leading up to the 2026 World Cup that's in the United States. Because like I said, I just think that their marketing, their strategy around soccer cards are going to be very important, because the World Cup, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for them to, I don't know if they want to grow that industry, because the growth in soccer cards was not based on what the companies were doing. It was based on the people that were interested in the cards and talking about the cards. Which that I think is an interesting concept also. It's like the growth of a certain sport or the growth of a certain niche typically is not based on what the company is doing. It's based on what the community is doing. And I think that's actually something that I want to think about a little bit more now that I think I'm kind of coming up with a thought in my head that I do want to dive into a little bit more now that I'm kind of saying it out loud. But I think Topps is going to have to figure out what they want to do here with soccer. And Panini for that as well, because Panini will have the World Cup. Like unless Topps comes over and takes the World Cup, the UEFA or the FIFA license, which I don't know. I don't think they will, but they could. They definitely could. They've shown that they're not scared to take these licenses. And this is like I said, the World Cup is going to be a once in a lifetime opportunity where in the United States, which, well, technically not, but I don't foresee in. I mean, maybe it is. I don't foresee, because the World Cup only happens once every 4 years. I don't foresee the World Cup being in the United States like anytime soon. Like, it's so maybe, I don't know. Maybe it is once in a lifetime here. They have once in a lifetime opportunity to really take their soccer card strategy and bring it over the top. If they can go into the World Cup the right way and figure out how they want to potentially sell some of these cards, I think it could be big for the industry. But again, we're seeing something new that they're doing with this national team debut logo, and we'll see if they do it with the club team. Like I kind of think that they should probably, especially after the controversy with this player who is getting a card, but it's like, he's getting they're putting the rookie card logo on cards of players who aren't really rookies technically. And that's what people are complaining about. So again, I don't know if their strategy needs to be to completely get rid of the logos, or if they need to like double down on what they're doing with the logos and figure out like, does each league get a logo? Does each, I don't know. Like, and that's sort of the thing here that I want to hopefully see Topps and Panini look into over the next few years as we lead up to the World Cup, because in my opinion, it's one of the best sports because of it's like if you combined all American sports basically and into one sport. That's how I view soccer, in my opinion. And I think maybe other people don't see it that way necessarily. But I think with the World Cup coming, there's just going to be so much opportunity for Team USA and all of their sponsors and all of the sports cards to be a integral part in the World Cup when it's in the United States.